Hello, everybody. My name is Kyle, and this is the Conservative Take, and this is the Top 3 show. I am really excited. There's a lot of stuff going on right now, and obviously in the news, everything with politics, and also with just TV, with the police officers, Seattle, and everything. And so before I get into any of that, the lead story, obviously, is the pandering of the Democrats to the black vote. Because as we know, the Democrats need to have the black vote in order to really have a chance at a national election. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to have a guest. I'll bring her in a little bit. But right now, I'm going to do a little house cleaning stuff quickly. Let you guys know, again, this is the Conservative Take YouTube channel. We're live streaming as well on Facebook, on our Facebook page. And those links are going to be in the description. If you're seeing this live, then we'll put that after the fact. We may show that at the end of the video. I'm not sure. We also may take a Q&A after the video. If someone's on, ask questions, we will do that. So if you're live, put your questions on there and I'll be able to do it. And so, but if you're seeing it, of course, if you're seeing it not live, then you're going to have to, well, I'm sorry, but that's just how it is. But you will have information because all the links that are mentioned that we do extemporaneously will be in the descriptions below. So what this show really does and the way it works is simply is we have 3 topics. That's it. And those topics are chosen by myself, my guest, or a combination thereof. Right now, I've only had as many as 2 guests. Today, I'll have another guest. And what I will be doing is I will be doing it such that I'll pick one topic and my guest will pick one topic and we'll pick a third topic we talked about off the air to talk about. All right. So with that being said, I am going to go ahead and get started here. And so what I want to talk about essentially is, for those of you who know me, you know that I am a conservative. I've been a conservative for quite a few years now. And I grew up as a Democrat in the Washington, D.C. area and did a lot of politically active stuff back then. Voted for all the wrong candidates. But by today's standards, those candidates would pretty much be conservatives by today's standards because the Democrats have really gone off the rails. So what I want to do is I want to bring up the actual article right now that I want to tell you about here. And that's going to be this article here with Candace Owens. And what we're talking about here essentially is, so the Democrats, in their effort to be so woke and to be so, I guess, inclusive, that they had to do a session here with the George Floyd situation with taking a knee. And so what they ended up doing was essentially doing a photo op of themselves kneeling in unison across the board. And it is, quite frankly, pretty embarrassing. Now, as you know, Candace Owens is a outspoken Black conservative. She has a show on PragerU, the Candace Owens Show. She's been around a while. We've done several videos on Candace Owens, including one just last week, which is getting a lot of good traffic, basically talking about talking about her and her opinions on the whole thing about George Floyd and why people really don't like her outside of the whole controversy with George Floyd. They don't like her anyway. But I want to tell people, well, it's not just because of George Floyd they don't like her. They don't like her from the very beginning. And here's the top 7 reasons why they don't. So that video, I'll leave a link in the description to that if you want to check that out. And it also gives a brief rundown of who she is as a person, what she's trying to do. So anyway, so she basically gets all over the Democrats. And if you see here in this picture here, this is a picture of Nancy Pelosi and her comrades kneeling with the kente cloth. If you're not familiar with what kente cloth is, you may have seen it. It's a Ghana, originated in Ghana, and it's really a ceremonial type of garb. The writings of it mean something, and the coloring means something. It's a very spiritual and sacred thing in the Ghana community, and it's been attributed to all of Africa. You'll see college students at graduation time; they'll have it around their necks, whatever. Back in the 90s, when everything was so Afrocentric, I wore one when I graduated from a Black college, and so it was really big. But this here, to me and to Candace, was just pretty much, I think, jumping the shark. She says here in this tweet, I have to say, I thought there was at least 1 or 2 things that the Democrats wouldn't stoop to for the Black vote. But there is apparently nothing. Dressing in African garb and getting on their knees for a photo op because it's Monday and only 4 months to November. You know, it's funny. We say this stuff all the time in the Black community, especially in the Black conservative community. And really, this message is actually getting over to the Black liberals as well. They're seeing now that the Democrats really are just jumping the shark on this stuff, and it's just so obvious and it's just so blatant that that we just have to call it out. And so what we'll see here is we'll see also other people on YouTube as well criticizing this. And so we have here the Democrats were actually coming after President Trump prior to this because they called his photo op in front of the church right as the riots in DC were happening at the White House. They called that a photo op. Okay, they lied about the tear gas and so forth. And so they basically said by Trump holding up that Bible that he was basically doing a photo op. But at the same time, you had the Democrats doing the exact same thing, and no one's calling them on that. But this particular article talks about how the Democrats tried to say that Trump was emulating Adolf Hitler by holding up the Bible, but unfortunately, that was a Photoshop of Hitler holding up the Bible. So the Democrats had to scramble after comparing the Bible holding Trump to Hitler, but only for sharing a doctored pic. They didn't apologize for the gratuitous of the and mean-spiritedness and evilness, and quite frankly, of the article, but just the fact that they messed up because it was a Photoshop. And so we have another article here, how Black Twitter users are also mocking the Democrats for donning the kente cloth. They say, don't treat Africans like we're children. So people are falling into this. They understand this. The message is getting out there. This is not 1992 anymore, all right? And even back then, we kind of knew. We knew that the CBC or the Congressional Black Caucus was full of it. We knew that they weren't really about the interests of the Black community. At least some of us did. But then they throw out Jesse Jackson for us. They throw out Al Sharpton for us. They'll throw a little here and there at us, hoping to keep the Black people just enough pissed off so they can come back in 4 years and vote them into office. And so this lady here is an African. Her name is Upiyonchu Ikajocha. And this lady here has a nice little history about with the kente cloth and how she is pretty much upset by it as well. And she's like, you know what, guys, come on. You know, this is just out of control. I'll leave a link to this as well. And last thing I want to do before I bring my guest on for the second topic of the day is this photo of Bill Clinton. This was done, I believe, in 2000, July 9th of 2000. He's coming from church and he's holding up a Bible. Now, this is a fact check article by the USA Today saying, hey, this isn't true. This is a fake piece, whatever. This isn't the same church. This is whatever. Okay, we get all of that. All right. It wasn't the same church. And it wasn't a event where he was walking from the White House to stand in front of a church to hold the Bible up. Okay, I get that. But every single event that the President of the United States goes to is a photo op. Every single public appearance a President of the United States, I dare say any world leader for that matter, makes is going to be a photo op. This is also included. Bill Clinton is one of the most brilliant politicians of our time. You can hate him all you want. You can say he's this, he's that, but he is a genius when it comes to politics. And everything he does politically is orchestrated, which is fine. But don't say that Trump's doing what he did is orchestrated in a time when the country was falling apart, when the media is blaming Trump for being in a bunker, hiding out, coming out to show the world, I'm here, I'm strong. Not to mention Secret Service all over the place. He could have gotten hurt. People understand that was a very brave thing for the president to do. I don't know if you know that, but it really was. So anyway, just comparing the two, this was never ever mentioned. And yet they call it a false fact check, but let's just face it. It was a photo op for him as well. So with that, let me try and bring in our guest and let me see if she is here. Alexis, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. How are you tonight?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am doing fine. So everybody, this is my wife, Alexis, and I had her come on today because we were talking about this before and saying, well, what a good topic to talk about. And I think I mentioned to her that I would like to talk about the fact that the social justice warriors in Hollywood and all around are doing their best to basically squash history, cancel culture, anything they feel is something that doesn't fit their narrative or their liking. So we talked about basically with police shows in general, and also particularly with even Paw Patrol. Paw Patrol, believe it or not, is actually targeted right now as being something that's going to be potentially canceled. I'm not sure how successful they're going to be at this, but let me ask Alexis here. Alexis, you love police shows. You watch all this stuff. What's your take on all of this, and what's your opinion on if they're going to be successful in any of this?
My first thought was forget about Antifa rioting. You don't want to have 20 million 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds rioting because they can no longer see Chase on Paw Patrol. I'd be more afraid of 3-year-olds marching in the streets, upset, having fits than Antifa, I think. If you've ever seen an angry 3-year-old.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, our son really loves Paw Patrol, and it's like I hadn't heard of it until he actually started doing it. And here's the thing: what's the main character's name? The police officer, or the main dog?
His name is Chase. And for those of you that don't have children, I mean, Paw Patrol is huge. I mean, most people, although I don't know, before I had kids, I had never heard of Peppa Pig. But if you have children, you've definitely heard of Peppa Pig, and Paw Patrol is right up there with Peppa Pig. And for little kids, that is life. And so they'd be very upset for sure. Fortunately, they have a short attention span, so they might move on to something else. But if Chase is not safe, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I mean, and so basically, if you guys don't know, the Paw Patrol is a group of dogs. They have special abilities. They have special talents. Some can fly, some can bulldoze, some can rescue, some can do whatever. But of course, Chase is actually the leader, right? I mean, he's the leader of the pack.
I think so. Yeah, I think he's one of the leaders for sure.
Okay. Well, I thought that was pretty. See, once you start doing that, you're going to start eating their own in terms of the left, because there's a lot of liberals, insane liberals, that love Paw Patrol and aren't going to stand for that. So, so we're going to see some infighting there, I predict. So let me ask you this question, Alexis. What about what about these other police shows that they're trying to cancel? I know you like True Bloods, correct?
Blue Bloods.
Blue Bloods. I'm sorry. And True Bloods is a vampire show, I believe.
Yeah, with Donnie Wahlberg, and then it has the guy who played Magnum PI. I forget.
That would be on Tom Selleck.
Yeah, Tom Selleck. That show, I've been saying for a while, I'm shocked it's still on TV, because it has some very unpopular views expressed on that show. But I think the fact that it started a long time ago has helped it, as well as, Tom Selleck is such an established actor. I don't think that he personally can be pushed around as easily, perhaps, as some of these younger actors or shows that are not as well established. He's actually also former military. So, I wonder if that plays a role in the content of the show.
Yeah, Tom Selleck is a big time star. I mean, he was actually slated to be Indiana Jones, and he was the headliner, but he couldn't do it because of his conflict with Magnum PI. So they chose, they really slipped, they really messed up there by picking Harrison Ford. That was a big mistake there. But
I think. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was joking. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that I think some of these cop shows, I'll be honest, I don't know all of them, or I don't watch, all of them. There's so many shows that involve law enforcement. I just watch a small handful, but I do watch the ones that have been on for a long time. And I really am curious what they're going to do about shows that are established long-term shows that film in either New York or California, when those two states not only are still on lockdown, but don't even seem to have any plans for not being on lockdown. More specifically, New York. I thought there were some places in California that were starting to ease up. I'm not as well versed, but for sure they haven't been filming anything for the last 2 months, maybe longer. And so I just wonder, are they going to be able to start in August and film fast enough to have a show ready when they start in September, because the networks rely on that ad revenue from commercials. And so if the shows are not on and it's still just reruns, or I don't even know, some new type of filler show, how is that going to affect the funding of the network? Are the networks so willing, to just cave into what they feel the mob wants, that they're not willing to fight for their people to get back to work? Or I don't know what kind of role they have in affecting change at the legal level, but I would think that they're one of the biggest financial supporters, and so I would think they carry a lot of weight, but I don't really know.
So yeah, and so they're gonna have issues there, because when Hollywood or wherever tries to go woke, they're always going to eat their own, because they always tend to carry it too far. And the polling now says the average American, well over 60%, likes the cops, particularly the local police. And so that's going to fly in the face of logic and reason against taking the minority, which I believe, and many Americans believe, are the cops that maybe not do it the best way. Maybe they are the jerks. Maybe they are the ones that are a power trip. But that, again, is a small minority. And people are understanding that they're using this as a tactic to overwhelmingly put forth an agenda which has nothing to do with what they claim it to be. And so they basically hijack the position. They take some small examples, and then they say, see, there it is. Now we can go ahead and lock down Seattle. We can steal 6 blocks, and we can create our own separate paradise, which, if you see the pictures of it, it's not paradise.
Yeah, I mean, it's the equivalent of, a couple days ago, or what was that, yesterday, we ordered a pizza, and the pizza was, from where I sit, it either had been made earlier that day and they tried to pawn it off as a freshly made pizza, or it was like a little bit stale or something. It just was, I could tell that it was not prepared, right before it was delivered to our house. And this is the equivalent of what the leftist reaction is. It's like me saying, this pizza was so disgusting, I'm going to go to the restaurant. I'm going to burn the restaurant to the ground. If the restaurant is a chain, I'm going to burn all the other locations to the ground. I'm also going to burn every other pizza restaurant to the ground. And I'm going to contact the USDA for importing cheese and sauce, because it's clearly not being used the way it's supposed to make the right pizza. In fact, why don't we just get rid of all Italians from the country and just reship new Italians from Italy and start over in making pizza? Because clearly this country doesn't know how to make pizza. That's the ridiculous reaction that the left is having, because they're unhappy with a few incidents of inappropriate behavior. That's the equivalent.
And then they go on top of it by using what their own term is cultural misappropriation, right? With the whole thing with the kneeling with the kente cloth.
And, oh my gosh, that's just embarrassing. I just wonder, who are Pelosi's advisors that tell her, yes, this will be a really good idea. This will help you so much. Because she's not educated on these things. Clearly, she's not educated on them. So someone is advising her, this is what you need to do. And she's so weak and has been so wishy-washy for so long, and will turn on a dime and flip her opinion 180 degrees depending on which way she feels the wind blows to help her. And so I just think, was this person who told her to do this, like a plant? Were they even part of her inner circle? It's embarrassing.
A lot of times they use focus groups, but I'm not even sure they're smart enough to do that. I think you nailed the point there. We said that she's weak. And that goes back to them being taken over by the squad and the radical left of the party. We're just seeing a manifestation of that. Everything we're seeing right now through Pelosi is basically seeing her being ramrod with an agenda that really she doesn't frankly agree with. Now, she is from San Francisco, so she's not totally opposed to it, but she's like, this isn't really going to work. She is not as unintelligent as we think she is. She is actually very calculating. She's a great fundraiser, which is why she's been able to save her job so many times as speaker and come back as speaker after losing the speakership. But she and the White House, the the minority leader or the majority leader. What's his name? The Senate majority leader.
Chuck Schumer.
Thank you. Yeah, and even he is the same way. I mean, there are old dinosaurs like Joe Biden who are overwhelmed by what's going on with their party. I just know that's what's going on. They are overwhelmed by what's going on with the party. They can't stop it. It's a train, and it's going to lead them to utter destruction. So
I agree. I think that they're very cunning and smart politically, but I think they have no concept and no clue about not just the average American, but even people within their own districts, because they're so far removed and they've been such a part of the machine and the system for so long that that's all they really know how to do. And I wonder if they even have opinions of their own. Do they even know what they think or what they feel on certain topics, or is all they care about is getting reelected, and so they do and say whatever they feel they need to do or say, to remain in office? It's got to be horrible, to put your head on the pillow every night and not really know who you are or where you stand.
I just don't know how a lot of these politicians do it. I think they're just cut from a different mold. They have a very thick skin, most of them, and they just ride it out. I mean, it's like they live pretty much on the short cycle, election cycle, where you're dealing with like when it's a 2-year term. So the long session is going to be right after they get elected. That's the long session. Essentially, they have a whole year with no campaigning. Then they have that second year, which is called the short session, where they're spending half that year campaigning. So they're living literally on like a 12, 6 months. They have a vacation. So 12 plus 15, basically 15 months they're working, if that, on a calendar year, and then take out weekends and take out. So they're really like on the cycle, And now they're trying to even do, I'm getting off subject here, but now they're trying to do vacant voting or proxy voting, where they can basically say, I can be in my, my clubhouse, in California and not have to physically be in DC to make a vote. That had never happened until this outbreak happened. John McCain, give some context, when they were going to do the Obamacare vote, Obamacare? I don't remember which vote it was. It was a vote so important. He was like actually had his cancer surgery or whatever, and he was not feeling well. He flew all the way from Arizona to DC just to put a thumbs down to do it in person. So they're making up the rules as they go. And I think what's happening is, I think because they had the media backing them, they feel that they're totally, they feel like they're indefensible or unbeatable. They feel like they're unbeatable, untouchable. There you go.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think I saw that Pelosi's been in office for like 46 years or something like that. So why wouldn't you think that?
Yeah, exactly. You get in there, you get these cushy offices, you come up the hill. Like if you look at the movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, you got this happy-go-lucky dude. I'm not sure, it's from the Midwest. He goes to DC. Next thing he knows, he gets swept into this lifestyle. You get your own parking spot, you get all this stuff, and he's tempted to do the wrong thing. It takes a very strong person to not be corrupted by that kind of environment. So,
yeah. But getting back to TV, I find it hard to believe that they're going to cancel shows that are doing really, really well. I mean, some networks, I feel like 10% of their network is cop shows or law enforcement type shows, like Law and Order. The idea that they're going to cancel Law and Order over this, I just don't buy it. I think that eventually somebody at the network is going to be like, no, we're not doing it.
I totally agree. I think another thing is that people really like law and order, and they like fairness. I think as people, we like fairness. What's the first thing you do when you're in elementary school and someone cuts in front of you? Hey, that's not fair.
Right.
And law is about fair. And if someone cuts in front of you, you want them punished. If not, you want to correct it, right? You want justice to be done. You don't want someone to be able to get cut in front of you. And that's why issues like gun control, that's why issues like immigration are such a strong point for Republicans, because it goes back to our moral fabric of who we are as people, right? And what liberals take to do, especially when they go off the deep end on some of these issues, they really have a hard time, because it's not what we believe as people. They want to fabricate it and say, and try and brainwash us and say, well, this is how you feel, but deep down we know it's not right. We know that we like fairness. We know we like walls.
Yeah, and like we also said earlier, canceling all these shows isn't actually going to solve anything. It's not going to appease anyone. It's not going to make anything better, because the reality is, even if you feel justified anger and hatred and frustration in your heart, eventually you have to come to terms with those feelings, and you have to work through them, and that there isn't really anything anyone else on the outside can do to alleviate those feelings. Like we talked about, if you killed my sister and you went, got the death penalty, people think that, oh, that's going to alleviate, all my anger or my hatred or whatever. And it doesn't. Eventually I have to choose to, not have those feelings have such a grip on me. And it doesn't mean that people shouldn't be held accountable for their actions, but this idea that if someone else is held accountable, it's going to alleviate my hate or my anger, I don't know that it will. And so just continuing to give in to these childish antics or requests, but who knows? Things change so fast that it's possible something else could happen literally tomorrow. And then people are like, Chase who? Paw Patrol what? So, there are things that happened 2 weeks ago that we thought, oh my gosh, this is so big, it's so huge. And I can't even tell you what it is today because things change so fast.
Well, you can't see behind me, but I was going to segue on my wall statement, but I'll save that for the next topic. But behind me right now is, and by the way, everything you just said, I'm totally on board with you on that. I mean, I think it's just a matter of just letting this thing pan out and let the cooler heads prevail, right? So I totally agree with you on that. But right behind me on my screen, I have the So you heard about the mayor of DC who basically said that we're not going to let the National Guard in the hotels, even though they're going to help us to protect our city from being burned to the ground. Well, that act was bad enough, but now you have Berkeley College. Basically, they apologized. They apologized to the radical left for letting the police, get this, guys, drum roll, use the bathrooms. I'm going to take a moment of silence right there just to let that sink in. You have cops that are protecting the city or doing their jobs, but because they have to do a function that every single person has ever done who's living right now, go to the bathroom, they're going to apologize for letting them use their resources. And I believe Berkeley is a state-funded school. Am I correct on that? Is that state-funded?
I believe it's part of the University of California system, so yes.
Yeah, so I think
University of California at Berkeley, right?
Yeah, so those tax dollars, indirectly help to do both. So I don't know. That's kind of not really a story, but it's more of a segue into what we just talked about. That this thing's just going out of control. It was so difficult for me to pick three things to talk about tonight, so I kind of lumped this into what we talked about with police and with our poor man Chase. Man, come on, man. If they dog chase like that, it's funny, man. They should actually do someone actually should do if it wasn't copyright protected, someone should do a fan fiction film on Paw Patrol. Man, that'd be hilarious. I mean, any suggestions out there? Let me know. I'd be awesome to see that. So the last thing I will talk about, the last story, is essentially going to be what's going on essentially in Seattle. Is Starbucks in Seattle? Is that where it started?
I think that's where their corporate headquarters are. Or maybe that's just where they started. I don't know if they're still there as their corporate headquarters.
So I'm trying to lump two stories into one by pinning them to Seattle. So I'm going to kind of cheat my own rules here, but essentially it's about Seattle. And this is a short little thing here. Behind me it has here that Starbucks prohibits staff from wearing pro Black Lives Matter apparel. And now there's a huge hashtag boycott Starbucks. So I don't necessarily want to get into Black Lives Matter, but I do kind of want to get into this whole thing about this cancel culture stuff. See, and I'm gonna get to the main story about Seattle and them taking over those 6 blocks and whatever, and how crazy that is. But what are your thoughts of a business? Let me actually from a pragmatic standpoint. What are your thoughts of a corporation trying to maintain their brand and trying to maintain their integrity and try to keep customers happy on both sides of the spectrum? Do you believe that they have the right to? What are your thoughts on them caving into demands from other organizations, telling them how to run their privately owned business?
Well, Starbucks seems to get in trouble every year over something. And I think specifically with Starbucks, the ship has sailed. Clearly, that company, is just infested with leftists. I don't think that really is going to change. And everybody knows that. So, someone at corporate trying to say, like, oh, don't wear a Black Lives Matter t shirt. It's like, dude, that ship has sailed. Just let them do it. And the people that work there, the ones that are, like, down with that cause, they are some of the most in your face, aggressive baristas I have ever, heard of. These people will tell the police, like, you're not welcome here, get out, like they are so anti-authority. Like they don't care that corporate said. I mean, unless they overtly get fired, like they they're not going to change. So I
Yeah, I'm
just
trying to
think it's
find
a
the story.
waste of time for corporate to try to tell them what to do.
Well, I heard that they're going to close like 400 stores across the country, if that's the right business I have in mind. But
I don't know how many
I
cities
think,
it is that have been horrifically looted and, buildings burned, but it's
yeah,
hard to have customers when your city's on fire.
very much so. Yeah, very much so.
But I
And,
mean,
and that's a really good.
your question was something about, like, does a company have to do what they feel socially pressured to do? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, that's actually what I'm asking. I already know the answer, what you're going to say, I think, but I guess I'm just throwing it out there as, what are your thoughts when a company has the pressure of keeping both sides of their constituency happy? Because everybody likes coffee, conservatives, liberals. And so, but then at the same time, to adhere to this big culture of now that we have to be so woke about a cause that a lot of people don't know a lot about, quite frankly. When they say Black Lives Matter, the name itself means one thing, but I don't think a lot of people understand what the movement has become. And I think that's what the problem the company has to deal with. I was wondering what your thoughts were in terms of their balancing act and how they should, how they should handle that.
I think every company should do what aligns with their own personal, kind of beliefs and core values. And so, um, you know, every company is going to feel pressure in one direction or another all the time anyway. If someone, let's say, is an evangelical Christian and they own a business, they might feel pressure to not put crosses in their restaurant or to not have a nativity scene out on the front lawn when it's, November, and it's their choice as to whether or not they want to do that or not do that. I don't, fault them if they don't want to do that. If they want to, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. It would depend. But if if a company does want to make a statement about their own personal beliefs about a certain, thing that's happening culturally, or maybe a religious affiliation or whatever, then they just have to weigh, do I feel so strongly about this issue, or this belief that I'm willing to alienate my customers over whatever action it is that I want to take. We perfect example, we went to a restaurant in Myrtle Beach when, we were on vacation, and there were employees there wearing t-shirts that said, the first symptom of coronavirus is no common sense. And I thought, wow, that's really bold, for that restaurant owner to take that stance and wear that, have their employees have the option to wear that t-shirt. And for sure, he was potentially alienating some of his customer base, but he felt strongly enough that he wanted to have that shirt, printed and have people wear it. And clearly it was not affecting his business because he knew that enough customers felt like he did. So everybody should feel free to do whatever choices, they want, but then be willing to acknowledge that there might be some blowback and some consequences to it. I don't think you should live in fear. I think that, you shouldn't have to worry that if you express yourself, your business is going to be burned to the ground, or if you don't say anything that your business is going to be affected negatively. But if someone goes after a business because they do or don't say something, then that individual should be held accountable, or that group should be held accountable, but the owner should feel free to do whatever they want. I think you might be on mute. I don't hear you.
I was on mute. So one thing that was happening, thank you. One thing that was happening with President Trump when he was running for office in 2016, late 2015, he was telling the story about when he was doing The Apprentice and they were going to boycott NBC and he was going to lose support from a lot of these corporations. And he was basically told these guys, look, just give it a week. They'll be gone. They'll be gone. If you show weakness, they're going to be there all month.
Right.
If you just ignore them, then they'll be gone. And so that is what I want to talk about now. And I'm going to read this because you don't have access to this, I don't believe, on the screen. I believe you're in your car, I believe. But I'm going to put this up on the screen here if I can. And this is going to be an article from Town Hall. And I'm going to read it just so you can hear the first paragraph so you understand what's going on. So what I'm showing on the screen here is a dumpster fire, a literal dumpster fire in Seattle. And the headline is, cracks are starting to appear at Seattle's Capitol Hill autonomous zone. So this section of Seattle downtown, I believe, is being cordoned off. They made a wall. Imagine the irony there, right? And they're calling it Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, which basically is a physical safe space away from the wretches of society. No cops, we're free. Everything's great and good and dandy. But unfortunately, there actually was a real fire, and they had to actually call the people they didn't want to call because they didn't want to burn. So it says here, Seattle, Washington, in a shock to no one, days after Seattle's government gave the area around, what, the government gave it to them? Okay. Days after Seattle's government gave the area around the city's east precinct to protesters following days of unrest, there are tensions within the loose coalition of people occupying the area and evidence they're still relying on city services to help the capital city autonomous zone. And while the zone has been relatively peaceful, it took less than 48 hours for an armed a rapper by the name of Raz Simone, to start policing the area with firearms. So now you have basically your own little war. You have your own little what's the name I'm looking for? Leader. I can't remember the name, but it's a leader who's basically taken over now, who's basically become this. Oh God!
You mean a dictator? He would love to be a leader. He's a dictator.
Called dictator, but it's called when you have a tribe and you have warlord. He's a warlord. So he's a self-appointed warlord, and now he's done this. And so now this says here that this led to a tense confrontation with a tagger. I'm not sure what that says. That resulted in alleged assault of a streamer who recorded the altercation. And this links here, whatever. But long and short of it is this: is that you have total chaos. You have President Trump saying to the governor and the mayor, "Look, guys, take control of your city, or I'm going to do it." And my question to you, Alexis, is: what do you think the president should do in this situation?
Well, I'll be honest. I don't, we're stepping into uncharted territories, and I don't legally know what the law is that he can do. So I for sure want him to stay within the confines of the law. Now, I'm very well aware there are provisions in the law that are loosely worded so that they can be used in very extreme situations. And so, this might be one of those situations. Unfortunately, there are, if something doesn't happen, I could see this popping up in other cities throughout the United States, because the craziness that this fringe group of people have in terms of their mentality is not isolated to the state of Washington. And so, sometimes you got to squash things right away so that other people don't get the bad idea that they think they can do this too. But I wish that you know, I don't know if there probably are, like, all the water is controlled by the city. None of it's going to be controlled at any kind of a federal level. But if they step foot on any federal property, federal road, anything like that, well, I feel like there's the open door. I also think that Trump potentially could squeeze the state, by denying them funds, or he can make their life miserable in the ways that he's allowed to. In terms of sending in the National Guard, I don't really know what the rules are if a state does not ask for that. Are you allowed to do that? I genuinely don't know. I think of these people similar to, like, I don't know, like a 4 or 5 year old just having a temper tantrum. I wish the city would just shut the water off. Um, don't allow any trucks in and out. Just say, like, oh, we don't have a permit for, you can't get any food in or out. Like, you want to be your own country? Fine. Completely isolate yourself, and you have no one that's allowed to come in or out. And let's see how long you want to throw this little fit.
I agree with you on that. So basically, we're talking about essentially a siege. Basically, starve them out, make their life miserable. And what I think they want to do, I think they want to provoke a confrontation to have the optics that Trump went in there with stormtroopers, and now he's acting like a dictator, when in actuality he's just trying to preserve the property that's there. Because I'm pretty sure people live in that area, or at least nearby, or can't get to their homes.
Well, I believe it's only a 6-block radius that they've taken over. I don't know how large these blocks are, or if these are commercial blocks, or
that's a good point.
If there are residences on these commercial streets, because I know there are some restaurants, so it might be a mixed 6-block radius. I don't really know, but this is what happens, I feel like, when you have 25 years of just leftist government education. Why would you be surprised that this is what you produce?
Yeah, it was interesting. I saw a tweet that basically, I don't have it here in front of me, but I'm gonna paraphrase it. Essentially, someone said, "Let me check out my woke history now. Let me make sure I have this right." So you mean tell me you're seceding from the country? So now, which tells me, based on history, that the government has the ability to murder you and then prevent you from talking about your history and your heritage from here on out.
Right.
I mean, in Twitter, it's ridiculous. I mean, there's so much funny satire and memes about this whole thing, how it's so convoluted. And to me, it's really not making their cause that strong at all. And I think it's just turning people against them. And the thing is, what people don't understand is, like, there's been books like Animal Farm, like Lord of the Flies. It's like, what would the world look like if people were just in an area and didn't have any government and they had to settle themselves? It's almost like the TV show Survivor, right? That's always been a thing people would want to see, an experiment. What would happen if you get people together from different aspects in life, and what would happen? And it always goes down to the lowest common denominator, because what the left doesn't understand is that we are sinful people who have bad things inside of us. We are not like Star Trek. We're not getting better. If anything, we're getting worse. And so that mentality, that Jeffersonian mentality of we can evolve through enlightenment. That was a big thing back in the late 18th century. We can make ourselves better. That's not the case. I'm sorry. And that's what the Democrat Party in part was founded on. And John Adams was saying, look, I'm a lawyer. People are horrible. We need laws to protect ourselves. And that goes back to my earlier point, saying that we know, because what's built inside of us about that person cutting in front of us, that's not right. Get behind me, And that's what really, I think, is going to overwhelmingly win over the independent voter in November. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that there's been so many people that were either independent, slightly leaning left, and some even leaning far left, that over the last 4 to 5 years, they've come more to the right. Some, they've come extremely far to the right. Some have come a little bit far to the right, but they've come far enough to the right enough that they either are just not going to vote at all or they're going to vote for Trump. There's really been no third party that has made any kind of name for themselves that I've been hearing any rumblings of, and so I feel like we would have heard of it by now. And I just cannot imagine, those people that you referenced voting for Joe. I just think it's a disgrace, and I think that, it's more people are going to the right than are expected, and November is going to be fun.
November is going to be fun. And I'll tell you what, Alexis, I'm kind of worried. Not about the election, but what's going to happen before the election. What are they going to bring up next? I mean,
I agree on that regard. I feel like we talk about this and some of your audience, may agree, some may not, but we believe that there is a spiritual war going on right now. And it is like, you can see in front of your own eyes, or read your Facebook feed or your tweets or whatever about how, Satan is doing everything in his power to, just have his way, and is very upset about all the progress I think that this administration is making in things that we don't ever really even hear about, like traffickers and drug smugglers and people that abuse prescription pills. There's been whole hundreds and hundreds of doctors and clinics that have been arrested and put in prison because they were over prescribing prescription medications. Those types of things are getting better. You don't really hear anything about it, and I think that it's really pissing off the enemy, to put it as nicely as I can.
Yeah, I totally 100% agree. I mean, I don't talk about spiritual things because I know my audience, but as much as I would like to, but I'm not going to shy away from it because it's the truth. And right now, we're dealing with so-called systemic racism. You almost have to go to the spiritual components to even combat that, because I'm working on a video on that to kind of talk about that. But right now, we've gotten to the point now where you have to come to a spiritual foundation to combat this stuff, because there's no other way to talk about systemic racism when you can't define what racism really truly is. And what I would say it is, it's a human condition of frailty, right? It's a human condition that says, I think I'm better than you are. And I said it in a live stream before on my Facebook Live, that's a hard thing to prove to anybody. And it's a hard charge to put on somebody. But because it's such a powerful word, in such an emotional word, they use it because it gets votes. I'm sorry, but you will be hard pressed to find a true racist. And so, but the whole systemic thing is just built into things that have happened that disproportionately affect another group of people. How did it get there? Well, I would say Democrats, a lot of it, liberal policies happen, poor accountability, poor choices across the board, embracing what I call a thug culture. There's so much stuff in there that helps to attribute to all this, but it could be resolved simply just through identifying through the things that helped Black people do so well in the 1920s before the Black Wall Street went up in smoke, literally. But nuclear family, getting education, and not getting married before, not having kids before you're ready, and so those things, those steps in of ourselves can be something that we can do as a people. I'm talking about Blacks in general, but I'm saying I'm putting the framework of the George Floyd thing and systemic racism, and you will see a change literally in about a generation. I think you would see that, and you would see immediate changes in within 2, maybe 3 election cycles. And I'm talking about the 2-year cycles, not the 4-year cycles.
I think you'd see a change in less than 6 months if all the Black pastors around the country talked about those things and told the truth instead of pandering.
You know what, girl? That's a whole nother. I could go on another hour on that one. That is, yes, the Black. I will say this before we leave, because right now it's been about, where are we at here on this time? About an hour now. But so, right, the Black church. One thing is people don't really think about much. The Black church is what kept the Black people together in the antebellum period when slavery was at its harshest. There was a strong bind with the church, and we got a lot of that spirituals that came out of that, those Negro spirituals about that my day's coming and that this isn't going to be, the end of it. We're gonna see our Savior. We're gonna be better place at some point. It was that hope, yearning for that, and you could hear it in the lyrics, whatever. And that one day that they would get a chance to get out of the cotton fields, out of the master's house, out of wherever they were, to spend time in church was a very powerful point. And it was that movement that led to the civil rights movement. It was that movement where they plucked a person by the name of Martin Luther King Jr. out of that church in Atlanta to lead a cause, he and Coretta, to help this situation with the bus boycott down there. And so the church was the one that allowed them to boycott that city for like over a year. It's incredible. And we've lost a lot of that. So much. It's still engraved in us because our grandmothers and our mothers and sometimes our fathers, unfortunately, we have an epidemic with Black fatherlessness in the community, but it's there. And we need to get back to that. And I think our pastors, I'm sorry, guys, you are culpable. And the Bible will hold you accountable for that. So I'm not going to get into a preach mode, but I appreciate you bringing that up. And I think you're absolutely right. Within 6 months or earlier, even.
And maybe even less. Also, if I couldn't name, I don't know, the top 50 Black entertainers, but whoever people think that is in the music and film industries, some of the ones that are popping in my head, I feel like, they've kind of gotten out of that phase. Like when I think of Puffy, like he was bigger in the 90s, maybe even early 2000s, but he's out of that, or at least to me, I don't think of him as like, is he even making music anymore? I feel like he just deals with businesses, and I think he has like a alcohol company and maybe some other companies. And so I feel like he's kind of gotten out of the culture per se, but I feel like, Jay-Z and Beyonce are still like hugely big in the culture. And so whoever the top 50 are that really are having a heavy influence on the culture right now, if all of them, like one or two is not going to work, because you see what they do to Kanye. As huge as
Like
Kanye is, he's not enough. You got to have a couple dozen of them. But if you had that many start saying things that Kanye says, that they can only shun and call them an Uncle Tom and call them a coon and all the other things that they call them for so long before they had to say, if Beyonce says that and Kanye says that and T.I. says that and XYZ says that, maybe I need to look into it.
Yep. But I'll tell you one thing, Kanye made a big difference, man. He's made a huge difference. Just the little bit he did. Even Jim Brown, people forget about that. Jim Brown made a huge difference. Yep. There is not one person right now that has more street cred than the former NFL running back, greatest NFL player probably of all time, Jim Brown. I mean, he left football at his height. I mean, he was like in his prime. He left to go to acting, but also to go into civil rights. And he's been working on the streets for so long. And now he was in the White House with President Trump and Kanye and talking about serious issues. And we need more like that. But like you said, it needs to be a flood.
But I think the average 22-year-old has no idea who Jim Brown is.
I have no idea who he is. So he's not effective. No, I agree 100%. But it affects the older heads, the ones who do understand all that. So okay. So I know we've gone over a little bit, but right now it's been about 53 minutes. Is there anything else you want to say or anything else you want to convey or?
No, I mean, we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. So there's nothing I'm dying to get off my chest. And if it is, I'll do that offline.
Yeah, I guess I get it later on, I guess. So well, I appreciate you coming on. That's especially short notice. I know how difficult it was to kind of do this, what you're doing right now, be in the car and everything. But I like your input because, first of all, with the whole thing with Chase, poor Chase, and how he's being mistreated, and in all seriousness, how police officers are being mistreated across the country. And I just feel bad for him. I have good friends, Officer Rick has been on the show several times. And I just feel I have a lot of cop buddies, and it's just not fair for them to be lumped into this narrative, and it's just stupid. So
yeah, I have personal family members that are police officers, and while I in my own life have thought negative things towards them, or for sure have felt anxious when they're riding behind me on the highway, I know that, it's unfortunately one of those professions that one or two or even a few bad apples can spread, and people start to think that the whole system is rotten, and it's just unfortunate. I think the people that often are the most vocal anti-police just honestly have no clue what the police go through.
No
and
clue.
and that if they actually had to do the job that those officers do day in and day out, week in, year after year, decade after decade, they would not be able to live with the integrity and the character that most police officers live with.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave some links. If you go to the description of this video on YouTube, you'll see links in there for, I believe it's water cooler or it's specials. And there you'll see an interview with Rick, and you'll see a couple of things in there as well. And he mentions that particularly the Kobe Bryant, when he did On His Own, he mentions in there that the cancel culture has been such that it's created an environment for cops to not even want to be cops, and they're having to literally pick. I don't want to be mean, and I want to be flippant about it or anything, but I want to say they're not. Let me put it this way: they're not getting the best people, because they're getting the people who are going to do it for whatever reason. Maybe they're doing it for the wrong reasons, but the ones who are the ones who really want to be officers, who really want to make a difference, they're getting a hard time doing that, because why would they want to be a cop when you have a situation in a culture that says, yes, you're a pig, you're this, you're racist, isn't it? Who would want to go into that? And
exactly.
And this happened. And yeah, exactly. Check out the interview with Sheriff Clark and Don Lemon, where he actually says this after some officers were attacked or shot at. And he said, look, I've been warning you guys for years about how this attitude is hurting the police force and is getting us bad people coming to into the academies. And now we're having situations pan out that are, bound in the community. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, I mean, we could really go off on this for a long time. I don't want to jump on that, but I do want to at least say that I appreciate the police officers, and I do appreciate you coming on here tonight. And I want to thank everyone for supporting the channel. We're doing some really good numbers, subscription-wise, views-wise. We're about to hit 100,000 views probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and it's just some growth here and there. And I believe pretty much because of what's going on and us talking about it. And hopefully we can actually get to a point where we actually can have a civil discussion. And I try and keep the channel like that. And hopefully I can continue doing that. But if you like what we do here, please let us know. And if you want to subscribe, there's a link below. Do that. If you want to check out our Discord server, check that out right here. It's on the screen right now. There you can actually log on, chat, and you can actually do video and see some of our memes we have out there, some videos, all of our content, as well as looking at and seeing the content that we use to actually build some of our expose videos. The last one we just did was dealing with white guilt, and that's a really interesting one. Check that out. Alexis was the one actually the voiceover for that, so bravo to you. Thank you so much for that. And so if you have anything else, Alexis, that's it. I'm going to end it here, or you want to say goodbye? And
no, I guess for once I don't have anything else to say.
All right. Well, cool. Well, thanks again, everybody. And I will see you guys next time. I'm not sure when I'm going to do this again. Hopefully in the next few days, whatever happens. But we'll see what happens. But again, thank you so much for coming to Conservative Take, a top 3 show. And I will see everybody next time.